From the shadows of the unknown, from the front lines of truth-seeking, this is the show that cuts through the garbage and tells it like it is. No hype, no spin, just raw, unfiltered truth. This is Forbidden Realms with your host, Gary Anderson. And yeah, Gary is back, and he's taking no prisoners.
Well, JC, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How you been there, Mr. Gary?
I'm alive, and that's better than the other part. Well, you know, I was talking to you before we went on the show. The sun is getting ready to shoot a flare towards the Earth that is pretty much equal to what happened in the 1800s. What's your take on that?
Well, from what I've been reading, yeah, it's comparable to the size of the Carrington event from 1859, I believe. But the scientists say right now they don't think it's going to be like this. It's not going to come hit us, but it is facing us, and it is the same size, a few of them.
And that's the scary part too, you know, that because one of these days something's going to happen, and we're going to get hit with one that's going to take out stuff.
Well, it's kind of like an asteroid or it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when, or like supervolcanoes, it's just a matter of when. But we've talked about it before on here with grid systems and shit and stuff. We should get prepare for these things.
Can you do a check for us? Yeah, we are live. I tell you, they keep playing around even with YouTube. That, you know, it's weird because they keep changing things. So I'm used to what it was. And now, you know, things aren't working the way it should. I got to just keep up with that.
No, we're on.
I know we're on.
Oh,
well, tonight,
okay.
you know, again, solar flare, what would happen to society if we got hit with a big one? It would take out the grid.
Well, if you want to preview that, just watch one of them episodes of The Walking Dead where people tribe up. I believe that's what would happen in about 2 days.
Oh, you know, on The Walking Dead, you know, all those zombies, they're my wife's family.
Now, is that the first wife that played with the Ouija?
No, my current wife.
Your current one. Man, I hope she's not listening to that.
Well, I'll find out tomorrow night. But anyway, tonight we got a great show, don't we?
We do. We got Mr. Glenn Steckling coming on, so I'm excited.
Well, let's find out some information about the guy.
Captain G.S. Steckling is the curator-director of the 60-year-old plus George Adamski Foundation, SpaceVoyager LLC, one of the oldest enduring worldwide UFO organizations in existence. A university graduate, veteran 30-year airline pilot, retired with more than 23,000 hours of flight time across the globe, also an amateur astronomer, author, and lecturer, he emphatically shares his extensive UFO experiences and history. Upgrading his father's 1981 book, We Discovered Alien Bases on the Moon, into Book 2 in 1997, and extensively adding to the Adamski book, Behind the Flying Saucer Mystery, Book 2, republished in 2015, he continues speaking worldwide while maintaining an extensive UFO archive and research program.
Well, how you doing tonight, Glenn?
Very good. It's excellent to be here with you, Gary, and James as well.
Well, you know, a question I've never asked you in all the times you've been on the show. What got your father into UFOs?
He had already seen them as a young man in Europe during the Second World War, just like many of the pilots in the bomber squadrons. And afterwards, during the military occupation of Europe by the Allied powers. In fact, that was one of the circumstances where astronaut Gordon Cooper, before he went into space, who was in charge of a squadron, I believe, of F-86s in Germany or Europe, had witnessed a number of these craft as well. So my father had seen them, my mother had seen them, and as we came shortly thereafter to this country and immigrated and became naturalized citizens, those sightings continued. in New Orleans, especially in Denver, Colorado, where we were out by Aurora near the Air Force Base there, and then to Washington, D.C. in 1963. He took a position at the Mayflower Hotel, and we had seen these crafts hovering over the city. And my father went along. A Washington Daily News reporter was there, including 30 other witnesses. They all witnessed the same craft and the maneuverability. And my father went to the Library of Congress, looked under A, and came across the books by George Adamski, which had clear, concise, telescopic and photographic photographs of these same crafts as we had seen. So my father wrote to George, and within a few months, George was coming to D.C. to lecture to the Air Force Reserves. That's where we met him, became his acquaintance, his personal friends, and his co-workers for the last 2 years of his life.
Very interesting. But here's the thing. He saw him during World War II. Did he ever describe to you when you were a young kid what he actually saw?
Well, yeah, we discussed this as I was growing up. And of course, when you see crafts that are, many miles in length and diameter, this completely blows away the false narrative and the pathetic attempts by others in this field to try to put this whole events and phenomena in the realm of the Nazis, which is absolutely nonsense. And in fact, a very good friend of mine, researcher, went to the German archives and researched that, and it clearly shows that these crafts were not ever totally finished. They did not fly successfully. They were just a couple of them at the very end of the war. And if the Germans could have built something that went 25,000 miles an hour to a dead stop and maneuver in every direction, and the crafts that contain them that are several miles in diameter and length up in orbit, then you would well know what would happen during World War II. This is all an attempt by some in order to negate and to redirect the entire reality behind the UFO subject, or to use better, the extraterrestrial phenomena. And my last book, the UFO Reality Can Truth Prevail, which was released a couple years ago. It is now out in Italian. It will be Spanish and French here shortly. It divulges directly into these falsehoods and clears them up with facts and documentation to show people where they are so easily misled. And I think that it helps people a great deal to get an idea of what actually the truth is. And of course, there's a large number of the UFO community that despises that book because they don't like to be revealed for what they are.
Well, there's a lot of people, not just in ufology, but their whole motive is making a living off of it. And that, is really upsetting when I think about it. I mean, I've heard every story you could think of in 50-some years about UFOs, interviewing people. And the fact is, I think the government loves these people because they're never going to give out disclosure. I really don't think I don't think Trump is going to come out next week and say that we're being, well, he might, because who knows right now. But on the other hand, I don't see it happening. Because
he can't, because he doesn't have access to the information, and the information that he has is redacted and twisted in order to maintain a certain military complex agenda. And so all he is getting is compromised material, if he even gets that. The presidents have been not cut into this subject since the time of John Kennedy. He was the last one truly given access, and that's because it was outside the government. He was taken to an air base by George Adamski, and where one of these craft had landed in the tarmac out there in the desert here in California, and he went in and conversed with the occupants. George also took Eisenhower in February of 54 out to a different air base out in California, and the exact same thing happened. But the whole stories get corrupted. Some fool comes along and says, oh, well, you know, there were Greys, and then there were Nordics, and they were fighting about, you know, who gets our blood and our DNA and RNA. What a bunch of Hollywood fantasy nonsense. None of that happened with none of those type of individuals. They were dealing with human extraterrestrials. And they gave Eisenhower an opportunity to say, listen, you're dealing with nuclear destruction and weaponry here that can be catastrophic to your planet and your people. We will give you some technology to help you through if you willingly give up this nuclear proliferation. And he declined. So it goes to show you, your own leaders don't care whether to destroy all of you in order to get their way. So once again, disclosure will never come for the very simple reason that the very first aspect of disclosure is not the fact that they're flying around faster than we can, and not the fact that they can produce area maneuvers other than that. Their primary issue of disclosure, which scares us so much, is the change in our society, because the very first examination of their craft show you that they operate on electromagnetic free energy produced by hundreds of billions and trillions of watts of electricity by your planet. Planet is a giant dynamo, like a Tesla coil. And when you have access to that, there's no more electric bills, there's no more transportation bills, there's no more industries and stock markets dependent upon that. That lone idea, the very primary source of it at the very top, is enough to destroy our entire infrastructure, and we want nothing to do with it. Even though in the long run, we would progress as a society and as a planet far beyond our imaginations. But we don't care about that.
Well, you know, here's another thing. These people are whistleblowers, right? Now, I'm not going to mention the company, but let's say if I come out and said to, you know, went up to Congress and said, hey, we're charging $2,700 for a regular hammer. And that was back 25 years ago. I mean, that's a whistleblower, isn't it? When you come out and you testify firsthand knowledge. What I've been hearing is I know somebody, or I know somebody who knows somebody. That isn't whistleblowing, is it?
No. And what happens is that people don't realize that no matter what the Pentagon budget is, and it's just shy of $1 trillion in which they tell you, but the Black Ops budget is double that, which has absolutely no congressional oversight. They have no treasury restrictions. They are given money hand over foot and to do with it whatever they want. And in order to make their accounting somewhat compliant, they come up with the idea of a $4,000 toilet bowl or a $600 hammer, because they're trying to somehow make the numbers match, and thereby nobody tries to investigate where in the world they're spending this money and on what.
Yeah.
And so once again, remember, whatever you saw in this disclosure program, and I appreciate people's efforts to try to bring out information. That's not the issue. The issue is it's the same old nonsense all over again. If you look in 1959 and 1960, under the organization NICAP, which was run by Donald Kehoe and Admiral Hillenkotter, who Kehoe wrote many excellent books on this subject, and collected over 12,000 reports and photos and everything, and presented to Congress, to Speaker McCormick, Barry Goldwater, Gerald Ford, Lyndon Johnson, all these people. And they all said the same thing. The Air Force and the CIA stonewalled them. They won't give them any information. So this has already been tried then with much greater people. Then in 68, under Professor James McDonald, it was tried again, and it was shot down. And if I remember correctly, Donald Rumsfeld, who was a congressman then, made the statement that to the people that it's not your business to know. So consequently, we have traveled across this bridge many, many times and gotten absolutely nowhere for exactly the same reasons. And so this stuff continues to get regurgitated in order to try to keep people's attention from becoming too absolved with trying to ferret out the truth. It's like somebody who's hungry, we'll throw them out a hamburger instead of a steak, and hopefully that will satiate them. And in this case, this program was nothing more than an accumulation of so-called names: military so-and-so, education so-and-so, professor so-and-so. This was all duck soup in order to try to convince you that these people know what they're talking about and you don't. And then the old clincher, the oldest bait in the world, is when somebody says, well, I know things that are just so volatile and I just can't tell you that. But yet, all these military people, and they're mostly former, the whistleblowers, they have signed the Secrecy Act, they signed the Non-Disclosure Act, and they openly admit that nothing that they say, write, or can do can be put out without prior supervision by the Pentagon. Or do you think the Pentagon's stupid that they're going to reveal information that embarrasses them or puts them in potential jeopardy? Of course not. So basically, all these so-called whistleblowers are doing is telling you what they've been told to say. And nobody says, wait a minute here. This is the same old line over and over again. And it gets us nowhere. So in fact, what answers did this program of disclosure provide? Nothing.
Well, I have to, yes, it did.
to-
It did. I'm going to be honest with you. I watched it twice. I gathered so much information. I had my popcorn. I had my soda. I was in my easy chair, kind of laid back. And it was like watching a comedy. I'm sorry, because it's nothing new. It just reads over and over again. If you go on to any on cable and look at documentaries on this subject going back 20 years ago, you're hearing the same thing.
But they don't want you to, Gary. This is the whole thing. They are trying to put up a buffer between now and the past. They do not want new generations, not that they have the wherewithal to even ask any viable questions, but they don't want the newer generations to go back and look at what had happened before and then question why nothing has changed now. So when you get new nomenclatures like, instead of UFO, UAP, this is just a matter to separate from the old in order to try to move forward into a newer realm and newer generations that will not connect with what happened before, because the history between UFO spacecraft and extraterrestrial intelligence and their contact with us, and they're human beings, not non-humans, and they are not a threat to your national security because they could have had us anytime they wanted. Let's be serious here. So consequently, they don't want people to connect to that, and it's working because most people don't connect. It's like most people don't connect to the fact that the thousands of people at Cape Canaveral stood there and watched the Saturn V blow up and go into space, taking the astronauts to the moon. And it could be heard for 20 miles, and ground-based telescopes, both professional and amateur, tracked it to the moon. And the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter in 2009, who detailed mapped the moon, took pictures of the residual landing module and its equipment sitting in the Sea of Tranquility, but people say, oh, no, that can't be true because I live in the age of Photoshop and anything can be faked, but not 50 years ago.
Yeah, you're right. And, again, I was watching some of these people who are saying we never went to the moon. They sit there and say, well, look, when the module took off from the moon to join back up, there was no flame coming out of it. There was no debris coming out as the engine ignited. And it kind of, they said it kind of looks like Space 1999 type of stuff. Again, I mean, what's your
Actually,
take
when
on
you
that?
watch it, you can see the retro engines and the nozzles, the positioning nozzle firing, and you can see debris separating between the base of the lunar module and the lunar capsule. So that's not true either.
Well, again, like I said, in this subject, people, what they're doing is trying to make money off of it. I'm sorry. I mean, I've listened to so many of these people that literally, what I want is the truth. And if somebody knows somebody, why don't they come out and tell? And I'm tired of the word whistleblower. They're not whistleblowers. It's all, hey, I know somebody. That's not a whistleblower.
All they are is perpetuators of other people's opinions or clandestinely promoting their own opinions and then trying to be obscure about where the information comes from. That happens on the news all the time. They tell you, oh, well, reliable sources said, but they never tell you who the sources are. And they just continue to repeat and replicate the message in order to destroy whatever they're talking about. So, when you go to the moon, let us look at it once again. And I've got these pictures loaded for you to see and for your people to see as well.
Great.
I have, dozens of 11 by 15 Hasselblad pictures taken from the space program, from the lunar orbiters all the way through the Apollos. The Apollos are the high definition Hasselblad pictures. And when you see them, you can tell that there's not a fake thing about them. You cannot fake sunrise, Earthrise over the moon if you've never seen it. You cannot fake atmospheric haze over the moon if you don't know it exists. And so this whole sci-fi genre, and that's the problem. We have come to accept science fiction as the substitute for science fact. We live in a fantasy land where we want something to be some way, and we don't care if the reality is inconsistent with our wishes.
Well, the question I actually have for you is from one of our viewers that sent me an email. Based on everything you know, what's the strongest piece of evidence that suggests alien structures may exist on the moon?
Well, you want to open up the pictures and take a look?
I can't open them, but if you can open up on your end, go ahead.
Let's see how we are successful. Share screen. Share content. Let's see here. Let's see if you can see any of. Let me know if you see this picture.
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right. So we know we got it right. All right. Let me start from the beginning here. I mentioned my last book. Here it is, UFO Reality, Can Truth Prevail? 330 pages of documents, authentic photographs, referenced history. I wanted to put together a book where people could take a look at there and say, aha, okay, it makes sense now. And you can either get this through me, through eBay, or through the publisher Blurb, BLURB.com. You'll see 3 listings there for it. 2 normal, 1 hardcover, 1 soft, and 1 that is put in there by Amazon because they add a 30% charge to the book, which I find kind of intolerable, to tell you the truth. The next book is Alien Bases on the Moon. That's the one my father pioneered, and I helped him with in 1981. This got him an audience with the Select Committee of Lauren Cohen Carté in the British House of Lords to review the pictures. You can see a picture here with the astronaut and the oval-shaped craft hovering directly behind him. I believe that's an Apollo 12 picture. And so it shows that there is activity. This book has about 100 pictures of NASA pictures and some other extra ones in there. All of them we inquired from NASA by ordering them through catalogs, which come like this. And you can see now a little bit better the astronaut up here with the lenticular oval behind him. Also, you can see some of the atmospheric haze that's on the moon on the second row. And so you get catalogs with thousands and thousands of these, and then you take the numbers and you write to them and you order the photographs, and they supply them to you. So it's something that you have to be willing to do research. This document came out in 1966, the chronological listing of lunar events. It lists in there moving lights on the moon, mists, purple lights, moving vehicles, and it goes back about 200 years. And it shows you that they are already aware the moon was not a dead or inhospitable place as we like to portray it to be. And to give you an example, in 1871, England's Royal Astronomical Society, they watched an area where it has confirmed sightings of moving 50-mile-wide opaque objects, great white domes, long bridge structures. And in 1958, the Russian scientists saw a huge glowing oval-shaped form, and the sightings are unexplainable. When we had our 12.5-inch telescope, we saw 3 items, cigar-shaped items, that were lying in the crater of Aristarchus. Aristarchus is 30 miles in diameter, and these craft nearly touched both sides that were about 20 miles long. Now let's talk to the people who talk about we didn't go anywhere. Saturn V launch, witnessed by not only thousands of people on the spot at Cape Canaveral, but heard throughout the northern part of Florida, tracked around the world by telescopes, both radar and regular ones, and then also to its journey to the moon. How can you say that that doesn't exist? And if you follow the logic of the next group of, shall we say, devoid of reality people, they tell you, oh, well, we have Van Allen radiation belts, and we can't go beyond the influence of the Van Allen radiation belts to go to the moon. So one group lies to the other group, who lies to everybody. And in fact, the radiation belt is nothing more than charged particles. You have the same charged particles on the surface of the planet as you do in space, and we walk around just fine.
Okay, Glenn, we need
here's another.
But wait, Glenn, we need to take our break, and we'll be back with you in about 2 minutes. So stay tuned, people.
Sounds good. All right.
Okay, we'll be right back.
The unknown is calling. Welcome to Night Dreams, Forbidden Realms.
And we are back. JC, are you ready to go to the moon to explore it? Oh, anyway, we're going to go jumping to our guest back. We're back, Glenn. I think our producer was sleeping there for a second.
You said we was on a break, so I went to get a little break. Sorry about that.
Yeah, well.
No worries. Everybody needs a break.
Okay, so we were back. So let's look at some more pictures.
Okay, well, this is, of course, a higher telescopic photo of the Saturn Apollo mission as it's firing before stage separation in the higher atmosphere. So once again, the idea that this didn't go is just kind of ridiculous. Here's an interesting picture you don't see often. And this, well, let's see where to go.
It could have went to Mars.
Well, that's interesting. It's a color picture of the moon that you don't see often. And maybe this one will show it. Here's a color picture of the moon where you can see different variations of green and brown and gray. things you never see very often, because all you're shown are pictures that are showing black and white, gray. They want to perpetuate the stigma that there's nothing there. But of course, we know that there's water there, that the Apollo missions in 71 left instrumentation on the moon that showed water geysers like Old Faithful spraying for 7 to 14 hours, spraying water under the surface of the moon. Atmosphere, showing the atmospheric movement across the surface, both solar wind and isobars wise, because of the pressure gradients that create mist and clouds. The mist and clouds reported by NASA and many different astronomers as well. And so the conditions are much different than what we try to tell the people. And I think that that's a sad dichotomy of what it is. Now, here, this drawing shows people the fallacy of the 1/6 gravity situation. Because if you use Newtonian mathematics, the neutral gravity point between the moon and the Earth, or what is known as the L1, it would be at 23,900 miles. But that's not so. In actuality, it's almost 44,000 miles, which shows that the moon has a much higher gravity influence than we thought. And the University of, I believe it was a Chicago student, successfully showed that the Newtonian mathematical computations were at least 15% off. So now we start to understand when you have increased gravity, this allows for more atmospheric accumulation, and you add water to this, you add temperature. We have discovered several years ago Goldilocks zones, upon which in the bottom of craters, the temperature, the constant temperature, which never changes, is 63 degrees Fahrenheit. 63 degrees Fahrenheit. Think about that.
Well,
and then you add water to the situation, and you add atmospheric compressibility. Well, guess what? You start to see the fundamentals of life just like we have everywhere else.
Well, how about could be a good place for a moon base too, wouldn't it?
Oh, well, that's what we were going to take a look at. Quickly here, these are some astronaut shots in which there are some devices hanging over the lunar surface taken by our own personnel. And in fact, if you look at the book by Maurice Chatelain, who holds all the patents and the inventor of the Apollo telecommunication system, he states in his book, Our Ancestor Came from Outer Space, that every single space shot was accompanied by extraterrestrial spacecraft, both in orbit and to and from the moon. And he categorizes each and every one and the circumstances. And there are many articles to bolster that claim. Here's the lunar the lunar surveyor that went in 2009 and flew over the Sea of Tranquility, and you can see the displacement of the remaining equipment that is sitting there in the crater area. So, you know, what kind of excuse are these people going to come up with next? You know, and they'll find something. There's no doubt about that, because they will never admit that they're wrong. Here, notice how this hangs right over the astronaut that's taking the picture. And you can see it slightly behind him and on the side because it lights up this entire side of the spacesuit. And so, and the Apollo astronauts said that they had these crafts flying alongside of them for the entire mission. Here's the famous shot of the astronaut Young jumping and of the flag waving, and that they had to grab the flag to hold it still because the people were going to start asking, well, why is the flag flapping if there is no atmosphere? But the point is there is atmosphere, and there is atmospheric movement. And so that once again dispels one of the myths. Not only that, look how high this astronaut jumps. I believe that he was on record for jumping 30 centimeters with a 250-pound body weight and backpack. Under 1/6 gravity, he would have jumped 10 meters high.
Now, here's the question, Glenn, too. I got a lot of people asking me through emails again that how did the rover get onto the moon?
The rover was carried in the auxiliary bay of the command module, and it was then taken down by the lunar module and then disassembled and then put there, and off they drove. But the interesting thing is, you'll notice that when the lunar rover drives and makes sharp turns, the dust from the moon comes off, rooster tails off the back of the tires and settles onto the ground. In a vacuum, it would just keep going and flying off. It would have to have gravity and the sustenance of atmosphere to support the molecules to drag it back to the lunar surface. Once again, the difference between reality and just people guessing. Here's a shot.
We did go to the moon quite a few times. And why didn't we ever create a moon base, or have we?
We have. If you look at Lieutenant Colonel Curator's book, The Day After Roswell, he talks about Operation Horizon, which he discussed with the commanding general and the Pentagon, of putting a lunar base on the moon before 1967 with 20 research personnel, more or less on a permanent basis. And they said that they completed that project by 1967. So when we went to the moon with Apollo, our astronauts were rather, shall we say, miffed that they were indeed not the first ones there by a long shot. And they already knew that they were not the first ones there as far as extraterrestrials concerned, because they were talking about those ships being huge ships parked in the crater. But they weren't quite aware that our own people already had been there before them, and they continue to be there to this day. Here's a shot of the ionized air, the charged molecules around the astronaut as they come out and they walk around. Once again, how would you use science fiction to create something that you didn't even know existed? And so, once again, these people are shot down by a reality check. Let's see what else we got here. Interesting, this is this big blue orbit in the atmosphere in the upper regions of the moon. As you can see, the astronauts down there taking a picture of it. That's certainly not one of ours. And then here, this kind of cigar-shaped craft that is up there as well, hovering above the landing site. And the more that if you take it and you expand and magnify it, you get to see more and more detail of that craft. Clearly not ours. Here's a great shot. Orbiting the lunar orbiter, the lunar module, Earthrise over the surface of the moon, none of which can be successfully duplicated by sci-fi. You have no idea what it looks like.
Yeah, you're right.
And the better yet is this one, which shows in a series of photographs. Let me try opening it again. I can't, so no. I'll try this. It shows you as the Earth rises, the refraction and reflection of the light off the Earth highlights the low-level lunar atmosphere over the moon, changing the color of it to ocular reflection. If there was no atmosphere, there would be nothing to reflect off.
Well, again, a lot of people say there's absolutely no atmosphere on the moon, and I disagree. I think there's somewhat of an atmosphere.
Well, obviously they haven't read up even with current information, because they have over the last couple of years admitted that there is a thin atmosphere on the moon. And so, it's like the other day I saw some comment on some kind of UFO thing, and where one woman said, well, there's absolutely no evidence, no real photographs, no real films. There's nothing to say that there ever was any UFOs. And I thought to myself, are you just completely totally separated from reality? I mean, the amount of evidence fills warehouses full of information. Look here, another picture showing the haze above the lunar atmosphere, lunar surface, atmosphere once again. Now, I'm not saying that this is a stroll down Palm Beach, but it shows you that the fundamentals of life exist everywhere. Like the old saying goes, remember from Jurassic Park, life will find a way.
Well, again, just on the news the other day, we sent to capture a asteroid, and we took some, rocks off of it, material, and then they finally analyzed it, and they said there's a lot of DNA, the building blocks for even humans on it.
Well, but that's once again, that's no revelation. Already 40 years ago, the Ames Research Center and the Dr. Ciro Panampura and others came forward and said they work for the Maryland Astrochemical Laboratory, that the entire composition of life exists in space. Space is the womb of creation. RNA, DNA, organic molecules, everything. These compounds rain down upon our planet as we travel through space to the tune of several tons a day. And this is the same material which is here. This is across the solar system, across the galaxy, across the universe. It is the same blueprint of life. There is no such thing as chaos. Nature doesn't operate that way. Never has, never will. There is a specific blueprint, and life is created for a specific purpose. If you look at this picture, this is one orbit, and you can see just barely the bottom part of the crater. The rest of it is covered by this whiteness. Now, when you look at the secondary orbit, the next time around, you'll see that this mist has all moved to the north of the picture, and the entire crater on the bottom now becomes visible. So, mist means it has to have conducive temperature, it has to have atmospheric pressure, it has to have moisture.
It would have to have more atmosphere than what we've been told or led to believe.
Absolutely. And on the backside of the moon, even more, because it's not as susceptible to the gravitational pull of the Earth. Look here, look at this mist that comes up and flows over the edge of the crater. Also, these two kind of funny looking constructions here on the edge of the crater as well have it hanging halfway. If you do a lot of lunar anomaly research and you go through thousands of pictures with microscopes and magnifiers, the amount of things that you find is truly astounding. But it takes time, it takes effort, and it's not for free. Everybody's got to work on it. Here you find two craters here in the middle, and you can see what appears to be like a dump truck of material pouring from the smaller crater into the larger crater, and we have an expanded view of that. And that shows that the moon is being used and mined for its natural resources. Some of it may be us, others may be the extraterrestrial intelligences that have bases there. It only makes sense. The moon is rich in minerals and helium-3 and gold and everything else. And so why dilapidate and destroy your own planet when all you have to do is use something like a moon in order to gain what you need?
Well, on the moon, if we have ETs on the moon, would they be on the backside of the moon?
Yep, I'll show you a couple pictures. Your lunar orbiter shot. Look here how this part of the rim of the crater is obscured. That's what happens when you flinch and you push buttons that you're not supposed to. So here we go. You can see that this hangs over the edge of the crater, and it also shows it projects a shadow on the back side of it that shows you that it's above the level of the topography.
Now, a question I have from one of the people on chat, could the gases be being released from inside the moon?
Well, gases as far as atmosphere?
Yeah.
Well, they say that there's enough water on the moon underground to cover the surface 50 feet, I believe was the quote. But that some of the strata is oxygen producing. But I think that we also have to understand that when we start to put together the competitions of the rest of the equation, gravity and compressibility, atmospheric pressure, of course, when you have water, what is water? H2O. And so when it evaporates, it releases oxygen molecules. And so I believe that it can well be a combination of both. Not any single one is the sole responsibility for it.
Very interesting.
Here's a lunar picture of these craft. This was taken by telescope. And there are lots of these type of pictures, and in which you can see these crafts in formation. That is, here's a NASA one. Kind of interesting. So to say that there is no activity on the moon, and nothing could be further from the truth. Look here, here's an area where under these red circle here, you can see some kind of device on the surface leaving kind of a mesh trail behind it. But also you got one up here that's traveling along as well, and you can see the object here.
Well, you can see the whole, you can see the track footprint.
Yes, yeah, you can. Exactly. And so, you know, there are devices that are moving along the surface. People have used their telescopes to look at the Straight Wall, the Alpine Valley, Aristarchus, Tycho, list goes on, a King, it goes on, in which if you spend enough time looking and you are observant enough, then you are able to see activity. Look, moon water detected already in 71. Certain moon water, water world, volcanoes sighted. And then you all of a sudden heard nothing until the 1990s.
Why?
And when India went to the moon and said, yeah, we found water, then we looked like idiots and embarrassed. And so we had to come out and re-release the fact that the moon had water on it. So why is it that we hide it and then wait?
Well, here's the thing, too. Glenn, why is NASA not releasing all this stuff? Was it for national security?
Well, remember, it's an organization that is composed of both military and governmental agencies. They are under the auspices of those control factors. And those two factors are the ones that determine what they can say or not say. When my father was at NASA showing the film, UFO films in '66, to 22 scientists, he walked down the hallway and there was a sign under the door that said, Reach Touch Department. So my father said to the guard, he said, why do you need one of these? And the guard just smiled and said, keep walking.
Here's a question I have for you personally. You know, your father wrote the first book, and was he ever threatened or anybody from a government agency or any?
No.
Never.
No. My father was very congenial to them. If you looked in his book, Alien Bases, he gave credit to the government for the work that they did to collect this information. He said he understands that they do not have the personnel or the knowledge in order to decipher it all or examine it all. And so he was doing them a service by taking their material and making it available. And boy, oh boy, when the book first came out, people, because he gave all the numbers, catalog numbers to order the pictures, people ordered pictures and got the exact same thing we had in the book. As time went on, those pictures came and they were all airbrushed. So obviously we caused some consternation among the officials because they didn't want to reveal too much. And that's exactly what happened in 77 with the Viking mission, with the face on Mars and the pyramids and the constructions on the plains of Sidonia. We immediately, when that report came out by two of NASA's best scientists, Petrie and Molinari, and I have those reports and the infrared analysis and everything, there's no doubt whatsoever that those are man-made. And so immediately Carl Sagan ordered the Viking mission not to land in Sidonia where it was originally scheduled, but to go to some obscure, dangerous place that was full of rock-strewn boulders, and the other scientists complained that that would be dangerous to try to land there, but they didn't care. They wanted the most desolate area they could possibly find. It would be like if you wanted to find life on Earth and you landed purposely your probe in the Atacama Desert. Guess what? When we ran those instrumentations and experiments again, they said there was no life on this planet. And they were using the environment of Atacama that's around them in South America. Here's a picture of Gassendi Crater. I'm one of the only one who has this. This is from 1930s Mount Wilson Observatory. And you can see all the tubular constructions inside that crater.
But
and look at them.
Yeah, but Glenn, if you really look at this, we're like the movie Disclosure just came out, and the ones previous about it, and all these whistleblowers, and everybody on X and Blue and Facebook talking about, alien craft and all this stuff, and wanting proof. Well, there's proof right there. It's been there sitting for years that there is ET, alien technology on the moon.
Right. Well, but they don't want proof. None of them approached us, and my material has been out for decades and is available on documentary and media and YouTube and everything. If they wanted to at least produce, include something that would have been of some value, it's there, but they don't want it. They avoid us like the plague. Anyway, Gassendi Crater, look at all the tubes, all the constructions, all of that, and that's not even the best of it. Let's see here. Look at this picture.
Well, yeah, it looks like buildings on the one on the right.
Yes, it looks like some kind of constructions in the bottom of the crater. They're certainly not natural tubular constructions lined up in unison.
That looks almost like tops of a building. Like barracks type of building or something.
Missile silos. Who knows what kind of nonsense we do there? But once again, all photos that are available to the public. This one I found recently. Look at this. How interesting that is. I mean, you can't tell me that these domed, they're not craters, they're domes.
Yeah, there's one right to the right of that.
Look at the sun. The sun direction comes from this side, lights it up, tube, lights up this side of the dome. If it was a crater, it would be the other way around.
So if we have ETs on the moon, besides maybe the minerals on the moon, what's their purpose?
It's all kinds of purposes. The moon, first of all, the back side of the moon is not the dark side of the moon. Most people are ignorant to the fact that the moon, the front side is lit for 14 days, and then the back side is lit for 14 days. So there is not perpetual darkness on the moon. In this particular Apollo shot, the backside of the moon was dark, but look at the huge device and the light signature that this is creating, taken as a photograph down below. The object within must be enormous. And nobody says, huh? Whoa, what's that? How do we explain that? And it's beyond the fact of explanation anymore. It's acceptance of these crafts and the reality of them. Look here, flying in formation, cigar-shaped craft and smaller craft in front of the moon. And
now, could that be our technology?
No, because the size of these craft of course, everything is relative to one, distance from the surface of the moon, distance from the photographic device that takes it. But in an average, these crafts, cigar-shaped crafts, are several miles long, and nothing we have can build anything that's several miles long, let alone propel it as well. So once again, getting back to the subject of being on the moon is an excellent observation post for what happens here on this planet. They have moved some of their facilities from the front of the moon, like Gassendi has been abandoned and moved to the back side of the moon, because we start shooting our weapons there. We start shooting our high-powered laser, our magnetic pulse weapons at the moon, and we say that's experimentation. Well, we do that to try to harass who is there. And not only that, as far as the environment's concerned, the backside of the moon is a little bit more stable and easier to stabilize in order to have constructed bases within the craters.
Interesting. Now, hey, Glenn, we need to take a break. This is going to be about 4 minutes long. And then when we come back, let's just have a general discussion about, again, life on the moon and what they're there for. And whichever way we go, that's the way we're going to go. So we'll be right back with Glenn. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Diving into the headlines of the mysterious and unexplained, this is The Unseen News with Guy Ticker, where the extraordinary is just the beginning. More UFOs. Several pilots reported seeing 3 or 4 UFOs in the sky over western Oregon, flying at different altitudes just a few weeks ago. This according to a report from KPTV. The pilots reported seeing strange red circular lights zipping around at night. And as the outlet also reported, a United Airlines pilot contacted the control tower to talk about moving lights seen where? That's right, over western Oregon. And that wraps up tonight's top news stories. This is Guy Ticker on the Night Dreams Talk Radio Network. From the great Northwest, deep in the forest shadows, this is Forbidden Realms. And now, here's Gary.
And we are back. How many of you out there on chat really think we went to the moon? I just want your honest opinion on that. Well, Glenn, we are back.
Well, that's good. Let's close out with a couple of quick more pictures before we go into conversation.
Okay.
This picture here, my father took out of the window of the Boeing 707 coming back from his lecture tour in 1966 from Europe over the North Atlantic at 30-some thousand feet. You can see the large cigar-shaped craft, and if you extrapolate via trigonometry, it was at least a mile long. The smaller craft's over here, and it's part of a motion picture film segment. So as the plane continues to fly on, this device moves underneath the number 2 engine. And so the interesting thing about that is that many years before that, George Adamski took this picture over Mount Palomar. Not only do you have the same cigar-shaped craft, but you have a whole series of smaller ones that are flying around in conjunction around. Now, as they drop out of the hull and become fully energized, they look like this. But until that propulsion system becomes totally in sync, then they still look like the hull of the craft as it is in its natural state. So let's see what else we got quickly here. I think you'll enjoy this. This was taken in 1964 by George Adamski, and it shows in Wisconsin one of these crafts in maneuverability as it goes sideways and front and back towards and away from you. The immense amount of acceleration and maneuverability that's available to them. They feel absolutely no motion inside. It is surrounded by a ionized field and has its own gravitational system with one gravity pulling towards the floor, whether the ship is upside down on its side or whatever. It makes no difference to them. And to give you here a couple of quick shots, these were still frames taken from the film, and you can see very well the metallic craft here and also here as it moved towards the farmhouse that's over there. And the more you enlarge it, the more you can get to see that it's a bell-shaped craft with 3 undercarriage ball condensers on it. And here's a film my father took of one of these elliptical craft. These are the newer crafts. They have superseded the bell-shaped craft, and they are capable of traveling interplanetary and don't require the mothership in order to take them to and fro. And that was also, let's see, part of a film. Let's see, there it is. And so this was in 77 it was taken. And so, once again, anybody who says that there is no viable evidence certainly needs to rethink their thinking there. We mentioned the book here, Behind the Flying Saucer Mystery. I've added a whole new section to that, and that will be going to the printer again for a new release of it very shortly. It's available here in 3 other countries. And also, my father's very first book, Why Are They Here? Spaceships from Other Worlds, released in 1969 by Vantage Press. And this has to do with my father and family's interaction with the extraterrestrial visitors that George Adamski introduced us to. So there's a few more pictures, but I don't want to bore everybody with that. A couple here, look at this. This is taken by the Apollo. Look at this device here that's hanging over the surface.
That looks like it's landed or hovering.
It hovers above. It never completely touches the surface. There is no such thing as landing gear. If there's landing pods or fins, if anything is triangular, cubular, tic-tac, or any of that, that is our stuff. That is not extraterrestrial, period. And let's see here. Here's one last shot. How interesting this is with, once again, the same type of craft here, sitting in a ravine. But look at all these constructions lined up here along the side. If anything looks like a base, that looks like one to me.
Well, again, just think about underground bases on the moon.
Sure. Absolutely.
Maybe it's cities and all that.
Well, I don't think that they are doing vast constructions. These are temporary bases, just like we build an Air Force base in different countries, and we use them as we need to, and then we continue on to something else. It's not a substitute for an entire civilization or living condition, but we have them here on this planet. We have some of them in our oceans, and we definitely have them on the moon. So I will unshare this screen now.
Okay, now I'm going to jump in here real quick. If anybody, I'll take one call in tonight because I'm trying to get as much information as I can from Glenn tonight. So whoever calls in first is going to be the one that's going to be able to ask a couple questions of Glenn. I just heard on different media, they're saying now that ETs aren't coming out from space. They're all, coming from the ocean. So every ET that we have spotted is supposedly coming from the ocean. And you know what I say about that? Poppycock.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, if you look at my father's first book, Why Are They Here? he has a whole chapter chronicling the ocean vessels that all the way back to the sailing ships, probably the 18th century, in which they have reported these ships flying above the ships, flying into the ocean, flying around them, all these things. And so consequently, yeah.
Oh.
So consequently, oh my God, we got an echo.
Yeah, I just noticed that.
Oh boy, this thing went crazy.
Yeah. Let's see.
Uh,
Can you exit out of your other screen? I still see it on my side. That, or we can pretend you're in a tunnel.
I'm not sure how come it's done this. But anyway, they don't come from the ocean. They monitor the geophysical condition of the planet, the earthquakes, the mantles, the deterioration of our natural cycle. And so they watch us very carefully because they understand that whichever planet is the first to go in the solar system, the rest will domino and cascade following it.
Interesting. Again, here's another question I have for you. Again, how difficult would it be to actually hide a lunar base from the public and other nations on the moon?
Simple. We don't, first of all, they're not hiding from us because we're already there. We know about them. And secondly, to hide it from the public isn't difficult because they don't pay attention to anything. They're too busy looking down at their phones. The elephant can fly over their head.
Interesting. Let's take this call right here. I think we have one caller. Who do we have?
This is Tom.
Tom who?
Tom, Metatron Power and Light.
Okay. Well, you have a question for Glenn?
Yes, I do. I find his information to be extremely compelling. And my only question was, why? Well, it's a two-part question. Why, number one, hasn't this gone out on the main media? And number two, how long has he been putting this information together? Because it's extremely complete and very compelling.
The information has been going out since the 1960s. Obviously, the space information since the 70s, because we had to go to the moon and then come back. And as far as the release is this concerned, well, like I said, my father went to NASA, invited to the Pentagon, the British House of Lords, Lord's Link Letter, nationwide television in '77 in Japan, lectures in Europe, Germany. Just a couple of years ago, I did Spain, Sweden, Italy, Sweden, Denmark. So it's not like it's not available. It's just that I think to a great extent, there is a conducive program or agenda to keep, especially us here at the foundation, as ostracized and quiet as possible. I don't lecture in the U.S. anymore since 2014, simply because they don't want me. I've volunteered, no honorarium, no expenses, nothing. They don't want me because what am I going to say that causes people to think about all the other speakers that are out spouting off with absolutely no information and foundation. They're not required to prove anything. And I find that discouraging, and the people that conduct that, I think it's shameful. I think it's shameful to abuse the public confidence and their desire to want to learn and know, and to use them as marketing tools to advance their own agenda. I will never participate in that.
Now, Glenn, my producer wants to talk to you for a second. Go ahead. James, I got to unmute your microphone or whatever, James.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, Glenn, earlier in the day when we were talking, when we were sharing the pictures, we had the same issues, and you had to get out of your program with your pictures and reset something to get rid of that echo. Do you remember what you did?
Well, if I lose you for a second, I'll try to sign back on. So hold on.
Okay.
Yeah, because we didn't lose him earlier when me and him were doing a little test.
Okay.
I'm back.
Okay, now you sound normal.
All right.
You sounded like you were underwater.
Normal.
You don't take a bath on my show, I'll tell you that one.
I'm not quite sure what normal is supposed to be.
Well, again, a lot of these whistleblowers, they're going on TikTok, they're going on all these platforms and saying the moon isn't what we think it is. It's artificial, it's hollow. And what do you say about that one?
Where is their proof? They claim the earth is flat. They claim the earth is hollow.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Is a hologram? No.
Wait a minute. You mean the earth isn't flat?
No, you have to get your pizza from someone else.
Oh, darn. So again,
I mean, it's every ridiculous claim that the planets aren't really round, but yet you look at the sun, it's round. You look at the moon, it's round. You look at the other planets, it's round. I mean, you have to wonder what happened to the mental acuity, the rational thinking of people who just spurt out whatever little thing comes to their mind. It's like with the alien visitors. If I have a good day, it's their fault. If I have a bad day, it's their fault. If I have a relationship problem, it's their fault. Everything is somebody else's fault because we continue to remain what I consider the greatest sin, ignorance.
I really think a lot of people just make stuff up in their head and feel that's what it is. And they it is so crazy, again, we have to look at the logical side of what is going on, what proof we have, and we have to go with that, not making up bullshit. And that's what's going on.
That's right. If you look at chapter 10 of my new book, you will see that we deal with abductions, and we deal with, from the clinical standpoint, Dr. Susan Clancy from Harvard, I believe it is, breaks it down that we are basically followers. If somebody else says something, we follow it. If somebody else gets traction out of it, all of a sudden we follow it. If we see it on television, then we can't determine the truth between science fiction and reality. Like when Avatar came out, all of a sudden, within weeks, people were reporting blue aliens with long tails. I mean, we are so completely brainwashed and psychologically impacted by what is projected to us through the medium of television and multimedia that we can no longer distinguish what would be true. And in fact, if you were told what was true, you would totally reject it. And most of the UFO community would be up in arms because all of a sudden 99% of them would be exposed as charlatans, and they would fight like hell. They would say, oh no, the government has been lying to you all this time, so they're continuing to lie to you, and you've got to follow us instead, and blah blah blah.
Well, the government.
These are the people that create the greatest confusion. You mentioned something about that statement earlier. In the 70s, we had a CIA agent come to us, and we knew several of them sometimes. They would come to visit and they would look at material. And one of them said to us, we don't have to go out with men in black and do all this kind of clandestine operations in order to subvert the UFO community. He says, you people are doing it so well yourselves that it will be a total circus show because of you own greed and avarice and egotism. And I can't say otherwise. He was absolutely correct.
Again, too, when you think about the moon, what better place would it be on the moon to have a listening post? You could listen to everything on the whole world, our world.
Oh, absolutely. You can monitor everything, and they do. And the reason that we don't want to go back publicly to the moon is because sooner or later, there will be things that cannot be covered up, that will be seen or broadcast accidentally. And then when the cat starts coming out of the bag, then one of the greatest revelations is that we have intelligent life in our solar system. And we are trying with every ounce of our energy to deny and negate that. They would rather direct you out into the far cosmos of hundreds of light years away because they know you can never verify it, you can never see it, and they are safe in whatever they tell you. I ask the people, do you believe your government? Oh, no, they say. Do you believe your intelligence community? Oh, no, they say. Do you believe the military? Oh, absolutely not. I said, so why do you believe the single source information of NASA telling you what is out in space without questioning it?
That's the whole thing. We got another caller. Let's take it real quick. Who do we have?
Hello?
Hi.
Oh, I wasn't sure I was on there right. Okay. I have a couple questions. One is George Adamski's experience, if he was flown to the moon. And are you there?
Yeah, we're
Yes.
Oh, okay. And then also, if you can harvest plant life in the craters, farming like you would spirulina, chlorella, algae, that kind of thing, or some form of plant food.
Yes. Answers to both your questions. Yes. George went upon a ship and flew to the moon. He described it. He described the firefly effect in space outside of a planet Earth long before John Glenn did. And then NASA, in its panic, tried to say, well, this was really not firefly effect, but it was the urine particles released from the Mercury capsule. Except for they forgot one little tiny truism. There was no valve in order to release anything outside of the capsule. And if people remember correctly, the spacesuit was designed so that if you had to go to the bathroom or urinate or whatever, it would be contained inside the suit. They just didn't have open valves that were out into space to damage the atmospheric content and the pressurization of the space capsule. So once again, that was shot down. But George described flying around the moon. He described the atmosphere in some places. He described the bases. He described the compressibility inside the craters. And he described some of them being covered in magnetic dome in order to be pressurized and be much more livable and comfortable. And of course, there's a certain amount of plant and animal life that is indigenous to those conditions once the environment has been sustained. Think of it a lot like the Biosphere Project in Arizona at one point. That type of general condition and experiment. And so yes, there is quite a bit of. They know how to take care of themselves, and they have a technology that's 4,000 years ahead of us. So what we think is impossible or very difficult for them is snap easy. And they're willing to share it, provided we don't use it for military domination. And that's what they are very concerned about, and they watch about more than anything, because we have a tendency to want to subvert our fellow Earth people with our dominance.
Thank you.
And thank you for calling in.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I read.
Yeah, go ahead.
I also read his book, and it's a wonderful book. And when I have gone to acknowledge it and type it in when I've watched other UFO things and stuff on the internet, it's been erased. That's a comment to the person that asked why things haven't been heard. He has been ostracized, and they don't want his book to be known to people because they might be better educated.
Well, that's why I'm finding a greater receptivity in foreign countries. And secondly, when I first put all my videos on YouTube, they did the same thing. They completely wiped it clean, no reason, no explanation, nothing. So I reconstructed it again and slightly different. And right now it's still there under my name, Glenn Steckling channel. You will find about 15 of my YouTube videos. And there's a lot of very, very good information available there. So I highly suggest it.
Okay, she's already off the air. Now, again, can you think of why the ETs, other than trying to get mineral resources, would be on the moon? Are they watching us?
Well, they observe. I mean, wouldn't you? I mean, let's face it. If you had somebody that was untrustworthy and volatile, and all the other negative characteristics we so happily embrace, wouldn't you keep an eye on things? I mean, if I'm living in a neighborhood and all the people around me are going nuts, I'm watching out what's going on. And so I think in their case, they're doing that too. That's not their only function. They have lives and purpose and other things to do. They get to travel the cosmos. They get exposed to unlimited experiences and thinking, but they also maintain a kind of an eye, a watchful eye over things. And once again, since all the planets in the solar system are tied together, you cannot yank one out of it without destroying the whole system. And even we have become to recognize that fact not too long ago. We made that statement as well. And so they want to keep an eye to make sure that that all of a sudden we don't do something so incredibly stupid that they do not have enough time to evacuate their people. And they, in fact, have been evacuating their people to the next solar system, to Alpha Centauri, for a number of years.
Do you think that the motive, if ETs are on the moon, they could also, if we do the wrong thing, hit that button and we're no longer here?
No, they don't destroy life. Unlike us, life means nothing. Human life means nothing. You can see that every day on the news, worldwide. Animal life means even less. And in some cases, I think it's even more valuable, but that's my opinion. But the idea here is that...
You're not talking about politicians, are you?
Yeah, I think they fall into that category. But the idea here is that they revere the cosmic consciousness, the Creator, for its universal magnificence. They do not destroy, and they do not kill. They do not feel that they didn't create it. They don't have the right to destroy it. I think that we do that on our own very well without any help. And so they do not want any part of the so-called karma of doing negative things.
Now,
and I don't blame them.
Yeah, our time is almost up. How can they find your books? And, do you have a website to share?
Yeah, my website is Adamski, SKI Foundation, all one word, .com. And you will find a great deal of information there on our work and what we have released and the information and facts that we make available to the world. You can find my books on eBay. You can find my books on blurb.com. They are the publisher. So when you order a book from them, it's published fresh and sent right to you. So you don't have to worry about something that's warehoused in a box somewhere. And I think that there are some books available on Amazon as well, unfortunately at an inflated price. But for the moment, the material is there. Like I said, there is no market in the United States for the information that I bring because they are very adamantly against it. However, the interesting thing is I did send a book to the president when he won his election in November, and he was kind enough to acknowledge the receipt and send me a letter back. The only public official that I've ever received a confirmation from out of the dozens that I have sent to. So maybe that says something for him.
Do you ever think in the near future, I'm talking the next 5-10 years, we're going to get the truth? Or is it going to take one of these craft to land where, that we can't hide it no more?
They did already, and we hide it anyway. The moment one of these crafts have landed, and they have landed. I mean, they've landed here in California. They've landed in Norway. They've landed in South Africa and South America and Australia, Papua New Guinea, all over the world they've landed. And we simply ignore it. We understand the psyche of people. And the people have an attention span of about 20 minutes if you're lucky. And it's very easy to quarantine an area. Let's say one of these crafts come and land in the White House Park. The military immediately quarantines the area and covers it all over so nobody can see anything. Nobody gets any information. You want to see the best movie that depicts exactly how the space people operate, exactly our mentality and how we deal with it. The original 1951 version of The Day the Earth Stood Still with Michael Rennie is the best. I tell everyone, you watch that and you will begin to understand some of the truth behind the UFO subject, and you will understand why that truth is so feared by the officials on this planet.
Yeah. Do you think they're watching reruns of Beaver up on the moon? I mean, I do. I mean, if they are, they'll think we're really nice.
You know something? When you have libraries that cover the history and the conditions of thousands of solar systems and galaxies and so much to learn and understand, I can safely tell you that they do not waste their time with make-believe. They live in a total state of reality. And that reality is the truth. The past is gone. The future is here. The moment that this moment passes, they live reality and they embrace the truth. And what a difference in living that is compared to us. We hide everything. Most people would be so uncomfortable with the extraterrestrial. First of all, they don't like the thought that they look like us and can walk amongst us, because then the first thing they do is they fear that who may be one and who isn't. And then what are they going to do to us? And the next thing is they are completely uncomfortable with any people who can read their thoughts, because we hide everything. We hide our relationships. We hide our opinions. We hide our likes and dislikes. There is nothing honest about anybody. And you cannot have a better world unless you seek it yourself.
Well, last question for you before I let you go. Do they look like insects or lizard people or zombies, or what do they? You feel they pretty much look like us, right?
absolutely look like us. I have had interactions with human beings like you and I from other worlds. The only difference is they have learned to embrace understanding and intelligence. There are no, and I will repeat it 1,000 times, there are no extraterrestrial species. There's no lizards, no mantas, no Bigfoot space people. There are none of these creatures that have suddenly, somehow, busted out of their evolutionary advancement and suddenly crawled out of the ocean and started to build spaceships and microcomputers and everything else like that. The whale, the sperm whale, has the biggest brain on our planet, and it is still regulated to the environment upon which it is born, and it cannot extend beyond that. Human beings, the genome is the universal manifestation, no matter where we go. And that's exactly what Dr. Panampura said. Don't be surprised when you land somewhere and someone walks up and shakes your hand. You people need to get away from the creature features that you see on Star Trek and Star Wars. This is pure fantasy, imagination that is bombarded into your brain so that you accept it. Don't be so foolish.
You have to blame the movie industry back in the early 50s that came out with all those horrible B movies like the One-Eye Monster from Venus and just all kinds of garbage. And, that's what, is cycled down through all the years. And that's what people believe they look like.
Well, but we have promoted that. If you look at several excellent books on the subject, the top of my head now was Hollywood versus the Flying Saucer, and some other ones. They talk specifically that right across the street from the Hollywood studios is the military liaison officer office that is responsible to authorize and clear every single science fiction movie before it can be accepted. So basically, they're selling you this agenda, the same agenda that they're selling you on this new disclosure. They're non-human and that they're here to do you harm. And this is total garbage.
Well, again, there's a lot of these people out there. How long can they keep making, it's going to be released in 3 months. We're going to get disclosure. The president's going to come out in 3 months. And they said it for years and years and years. Or you have another person who says, that they can summons ET, or they can, but all these people charge money for what they're doing. You know that.
In 1992, I was giving a lecture at a convention in Los Angeles where some person came up to me and said, within 6 months, we're going to have disclosure. It's all going to be out. And I said, yeah, good luck with that. That was in 1992, and we still don't have it now because, once again, the reasons that we hide disclosure is because we're scared of the planetary changes that it will cause. So all they do is like looking at the crystal ball or reading your palm or throwing you some tarot cards. They're telling you what you want to hear. And then all of a sudden, when it doesn't come about, they say, oh, well, let's revise the date again. And it keeps going and going. And people keep swallowing it like a big fish on the baited hook. And so in a way, you can't blame the perpetrators of this as much as you can the fools that actually buy into it. And so I would not be so gullible if I were them.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll find the truth out, not from the government. We'll find it out, by ourselves eventually, because we're not going to get it from the government. And if you're going to believe a lot of these people that go around and spread all these lies, and that's what it is. It's total lies, and they have nothing to back it up. And that's
remember, the government doesn't know itself.
No,
you look at the Congress building, the 438 congressmen and the 100 senators. They don't know diddly squat. So to expect somebody who knows nothing to tell you something that's viable is rather foolish, isn't it?
Yeah, when Congress is actually working. Okay, Glenn, you take care. Have a great weekend. And until we have you on again, I want you to take care, okay?
You too. You have a great holiday, and we'll see you sometime in the future.
Okay, you take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, JC, who do we have coming up?
Well, next week we have Mr. Stan Deyo coming back. It's been a few years since he's been on the show, but he's got some fascinating stuff. He talks about Faraday cages, and actually he's the one to talk about, good person to talk about with the sun flares that we touched on earlier.
Yeah, that might cause some problems. And then who else do we have?
Well, let's see. Following week after that, we have Mr. Brian Corey Dobbs coming on. And I'm going to tell you something. You want to talk about some fascinating pictures that leave no air of doubt about structures on Mars. Wait till he comes on with his pictures.
That's going to be really interesting, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And then who else do we have coming up?
Well, then there's going to be a little Christmas break there, but then we're going to have, starting in January, Mr. Gary Hasseltine come on. He's had some UFO encounters from the UK, so that's going to be good to get their kind of views from it from the UK side.
And we're working on getting some great guests on. We're working on getting an astronaut, one of the 4 remaining astronauts that went to the moon on. So, we'll know more hopefully in the next week or two if he's going to come on the show.
Yeah, that'd be great if we get him on. I remember watching him in first grade in school. They took time out, brought the TV in one of them big old stands with the antennas. We watched him walk on the moon.
And who was that? Who's his name?
That was Mr. Duke.
Yeah.
Mr. Duke.
That's going to be really interesting. Now, if all you can do me a favor, as we're growing, I need your help. Tell your friends about the show, and make sure you leave a comment and do a thumbs up. And then the next day, if you can go back onto our show page or our channel page, there's a little on your phone. If you scroll down and sideways, you'll see a hype. It says hype. You can click it, and then you can click it a multiple of 3 times. That gives us points. The more points we get, the more sharing we get. And by the way, by tomorrow, we're going to have 390,000 subscribers on YouTube on this channel.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, we'll be closing on 400 very soon.
Yeah, I'm hoping by the end of the first week of January, we'll have 400,000 subscribers. And again, I want to thank all the people who listen to us worldwide, everywhere from Paraguay to Germany, the UK, New Zealand, Australia, a big audience in Canada, Mexico, Pakistan, India, Vietnam, and the Philippines. And there's a whole bunch of other, Brazil. We got a good following in Brazil. And all the people, when you watch the show, I just want to say to all of you, thank you. And another thing that's really weird, I was talking to my rep today, Google for YouTube. We're doing something that a lot of shows aren't doing. We're pulling in people 18 to 25 year age group, and 25 to 35 is our core group of listeners. In other words, we're pulling in a lot of young people. And for this type of show, I was shocked to find that out.
Yeah, a lot of young people are tuning in. And listen, they like the guest and the subject matter, and that's key.
Now they like my personality. Anyway, everybody have a good one. I'm going to do some Christmas shopping, online here starting tomorrow. And everybody have a good one. Again, tell your friends about us, and we'll catch you on the other side.
Time slips. A haunted office building on a haunted street. A haunted coal town. Mysterious black cats. Unexplained light anomalies. UFOs, UAPs in the air and on the ground. Bridges in liminal spaces, cryptids, shamans, and a werewolf. Disclosure: you don't need a ranch in Utah. All this and more happens in rural southwestern Pennsylvania. Now available on Amazon from author Kevin Paul. Politics and the Paranormal in Greene County, Pennsylvania. Read this captivating book as soon as you can by author Kevin Paul. Available now. Bigfoot Origins: The Search for the Cryptid Homeland by Mike Dupler. This is the most comprehensive and in-depth examination of Bigfoot ever written. How did Bigfoot in North America, the Yowie in Australia, and the Woodwoes, Britain's Bigfoot, get to where they are today? Mike Dupler connects the dots, and the conclusions are incredible. This changes everything. Don't be left out in the woods, in the cold, not knowing. Read Bigfoot Origins: The Search for the Cryptid Homeland by Mike Dupler. Available now on Amazon.
And I want to take a second here to say that the farmer's dog, they're a fantastic food for your dogs. They're like the type of food you would make in your own kitchen. And compared to your dry dog food or the other dog food, this meets all the requirements of human consumption food. It's stocked with vitamins and everything that your dog needs. And if you want a shiny coat back on your dog, again, the farmer's dog is the way to go. I started buying it here myself here recently. We have 2 Great Danes and a German Shepherd. And the German Shepherd is pushing 14 years old, way past its life cycle. And since we've been giving this dog food, I've noticed that the dog is running around and bouncing around again and loves going out and running around in the back. And I tell you what, I haven't seen that in a couple of years. It tells the nourishment that the dogs are not getting with dry dog food. So again, it's the farmer's dog, and you might want to check them out. Everybody have a good one, and we're history.